and running too. Yeah, everything should be all set. Well, I just want to say welcome everybody to this masterclass on how to play Brawl. I will mainly cover fundamentals. We're gonna focus on how to run this composition, maybe some of the specifics of communication, and also as a bonus, we'll talk about how to play versus the Brawl. I will not cover too many details. It's gonna be more macro talk about how to play this composition. If you guys do remember that I've been doing some of the masterclasses before on how to play poke composition, how to play dive as well. Well, I guess for the poke it was mostly not composition, but kind of mainly poke characters, the long range characters. It's been a while ago, but the dive, it was mostly the macro talk, the same which I'm gonna do today. I will focus on the strengths, the weaknesses, and all the stuff about how to play Brawl properly. Now, let's just start with, first of all, the strengths and the weaknesses of the Brawl composition. Well, for anyone who is not familiar, what Brawl composition is. Brawl composition is usually any sort of short range composition which has a lot of sustain. And that's why we'll see on all the slides, there are going to be some of the Brawl, usually more Brawl characters which can represent this category. For example, in here we can see the thing. There's also Ammo. Those are pretty good brawlers. Why? Because they're always going to be fighting at a short range, usually low mobility, and this is one of their weaknesses typically. And because they have that low mobility, it makes it really hard for them to set up good map control, just control the off angles, surround the enemy, like you could do with a dive. And it's really resource based, and it can be the strengths and also weakness at the same time. Because you have a lot of sustain, you're able to take a lot of the early fights, you're able to just fight face to face with the enemy. But at the same time, if the enemy team is poking you down and the fight is going to be pretty long, then it will be pretty hard for you to survive. That's why if all of your resources for start, for example, for the Amma, it can be her crystal mod. For this thing, it can be his mobility, for example, can be sort of like a self-sustain, or his jump. Yeah, when we just trying to sustain that too, this can also be considered as some sort of sustain in a way. We pretty much, if we're out of those abilities, it's going to be complicated for us to survive. And then I think it will be good to discuss after this right away just how to actually play Brawl, just going over some most important Brawl specifics. I'm just gonna make this slide. Yeah, I think it should be all good. Can you guys see everything here, by the way? I know it's might be slightly small written, but yeah. Is it
yeah, yes sir.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, it's gonna be pretty much one of the longest slide with the whole the series, but later on this is gonna be all pretty much more in-game examples afterwards. But yeah, let's just go over the series. First of all, when we play the Brawl, we need to identify what space we are playing for. And the second, I think the most important specific is understanding rotations and resources. Because like I mentioned, it's really resource-based composition, and at the same time, we have a lot of, just low mobility. Yeah, there's not a lot of mobility cooldowns we have, so this is pretty important. Let's start with the space. Because Brawl compositions mainly gonna be fighting face-to-face, have a lot of short-range capabilities, you will see that mostly team compositions as a Brawl, like any sort of Brawl characters, they will be taking more softer angles. In theory, Brawl usually plays stacked together, but you still can take soft angles, just not being too far away from the rest of the team. I will give you an example of that. Let me just go on the board in here. Let's say most of our team is going to be at this position. Well, let's just make it bigger, maybe, so you guys can see. Okay, so let's do this. Yeah, let's just say that most of our team is going to be at position A, and the enemy team is at the position B. We're attacking into this direction. Yeah, maybe let's imagine this is sort of main lane over here. a typical situation could happen on any escort map or in domination, doesn't matter. We just both teams are meeting each other on the main lane, and then after that, we deciding what to do. So what happens if we're on a soft angle is usually going to be the positions like this here, or maybe it can be this here. We're usually not too far in the enemy backline. Like, for example, we could be somewhere, let's just say this is going to be position C or C1 over here, or even going deeper, position D, somewhere over there. It's just where we're completely on the enemy backline, like we can do with most of the dive characters. For example, if you play something like Psylocke or you play Black Panther, you can be pretty deep in the backline usually. But with the Brawl, you usually don't have as much mobility, so you're gonna play more softer angles. Angle control is really important still, and I do mention that all the time. The angles, what kind of space we control, and how we do that is always important, is something I talk about in the VOD reviews, is something what I talk about in the masterclasses too. So yeah, still don't feel like you have to be all stacked in one space. Try to find a way, go a little bit left, a little bit right. For example, you play Bucky, you can look for the hook. You play Wolverine, you can look to just go for the jump on the enemy by taking soft angle. Yeah, this is gonna be something what you will do quite a lot. So this is about the angles, and second thing, it's very simple. We mostly gonna be playing short range. Obviously, they're different characters, but mostly the brawlers are really good at fighting at the face-to-face. Yeah, for example, if we're talking about characters like Bucky, I would say they're pretty good for the brawl, but at the same time they have some poke capabilities. Why? Because we're also able to take the fights at the mid-range. So just understand that, especially in this game, as Marvel Rivals, you have a lot of versatile characters, but you can always find what is that main trait the character has. Yeah, is it gonna be more about the brawl? Is it gonna be more about the dive? Or is it gonna be more about the poke? But you will kind of notice that all the characters, they have a little bit of everything. And that's why, well, in my experience, I would say the Bucky is more of a brawl character just because of his kit, because of his hook, because of just how much damage he does at the short distance. But at the same time, we have some poke capabilities as well. We can take a little bit of the longer range fights too with him, for example. But there are also other characters we'll talk about. For example, Invisible Woman is pretty interesting. You fighting more at the mid range a lot of the times, but because you are not as well, first of all, you don't have as much mobility, and second, you have a lot of sustain. You'll find yourself fighting closer to your team. You will see that in a lot of the pro players, when they play together, the Invisible Woman could be pretty good with those compositions, but we'll talk about that later too. Anyway, a short range is all about using space where it's also hard to get surrounded. We need to limit the amount of angles we deal with. I will give you an example of that real quick. Okay, let me just make the game bigger. Okay, here we go. Yeah, I think let's just use this map. It can be any map, really. It doesn't matter to us. We're trying to think about the space where it's hard for us to get surrounded. It's usually going to be in some sort of buildings or chokes as well. For example, if we're fighting over here, we're fighting those chokes really aggressive, we're not allowing the enemies to surround us by going through the choke, then this is really good. Or we could also play in the buildings like this one in here, and then we limit the amount of angles we deal with not getting surrounded like we could have if we play on the right side. If the multiple enemies come from different directions, especially if you play versus the dive, that can be pretty oppressive. Yeah, this might be difficult for you to survive as the brawl composition. By the way, don't pay attention to compositions in here. I'm just using this map as an example, in-game example right now. We'll talk about the brawl compositions later, the examples later. Okay, does everything make sense about the short range and the angles, or do you guys have any questions? Yeah, let me see. I'm gonna open up the
Does
chat.
make sense.
Makes sense.
Yeah,
Also,
makes sense.
gonna read the question from Orange. Would you say Scarlet Witch has dive capabilities? Yes, she does, because she has mobility to some point, right? That's why you see that as a Scarlet Witch, you can even be flanking sometimes. But as I mentioned, don't take it as think about the character as a whole in a way. Yeah, think about that overall what we are trying to do on the map. Maybe let me just draw this for you real quick. How I describe it as a sort of triangle. You have one side of triangle is the brawl, another side of triangle is the dive, and the other side of triangle is poke. And think about what character is leaning towards. In my opinion, Scarlet Witch can be okay at brawling, okay at diving. I think she's still slightly more leaning towards the brawl in here. Yeah, for example, Winter Soldier is leaning more towards the brawl, but has some poke capabilities too at the same time. Yeah, no dive capabilities though. With the characters like for example, Psylocke. Yeah, Psylocke is a good one. She has a little bit of brawl capabilities, but mostly is good at diving. Yeah, she's mostly really good at going in. Thor could be a really good example too. You have a lot of dive capabilities because of mobility, because of the dash, but you can also be brawling with the enemies too. Brawling is all about having sustain in the fight, but if we compare Thor to something like Amma, Thor will not have as much sustain compared to Amma, because Amma is all about the brawl, if that makes sense. Yeah, just leaning towards that category. That's how I would think about that, and yeah, hopefully this makes it easy. Yeah, you sort of poke and prod and find your limits in terms of diving and still brawl when you can. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, this is how I would say that too. Yeah, perfect. Now let's move to the other. Let's move forward. And yeah, by the way, we mentioned about the angles, we mentioned about the range, and all of that means when we're trying to understand what space we're playing for, because we understand the angle, because we understand the exact range we play at, we can understand the space we play for. And that's why you notice that we usually play for enclosed spaces. We're usually trying to exactly use something like this here. It can be the even objective itself can be considered more of an enclosed space. We can force the fights on the objective sometimes, but we'll talk about that going forward too. Yeah, to mention it here though, can play close to point. It's not necessary that you always play in the point, but it's so important that you have the capability to contest the point from those enclosed spaces where you are. If not, if the map is not allowing you to, then a forcing point early can be okay, in my opinion. All right, let's see. Let's move forward. Yeah, rotations and resources. I could go more in depth on this, but honestly, just for the sake of, so we have enough time to cover everything, I will cover the most important details about everything. By the way, guys, if you guys are interested, I'm using all the ideas from the previous game as well. It's called Overwatch. Yeah, just so you guys know, I've been coaching for, I think it's just almost 7 years already. I've been coaching Overwatch, now I'm coaching Marvel Rivals too, and most of the concepts I'm talking about, this is really also related to that game, and it's pretty much applicable for this one too. So if you guys really want to know more about everything, I can send you more additional materials, more additional, well, there's just more slides like this, or maybe the Google Docs. Just let me know. Maybe you can message me with any questions you guys have later. But yeah, let's keep watching the rotations and resources. First of all, what we're trying to do with this, if we trying to rotate to the enemy, is, like we said, is mostly going to push towards, it's either push towards the enemy, yeah, get really close to them, or you can try to force the point. And in order to do that, you need to reduce the amount of poke damage you're taking, because if you do, then you will have enough sustainability, you will have enough defensive resources. And if you do, then you're able to take those face-to-face fights in a way. And that's why I highly suggest, whenever you guys play those compositions, just go from corner to corner, cover to cover in a way. Yeah, have more defensive sustained resources this way, and use cooldowns, whatever defensive resources you got, to make it easy to rotate. It's gonna be usually shields or movement abilities, I would say. Anything what supports a kind of cheap support in a way, which does not require the cooldown. Like, for example, if you realize that you have to use Lucky Lamp when you're rotating, then something is wrong. This is a really big cooldown. But if I'm just putting the orb on somebody, or using the shield of Doctor Strange and moving, or using Groot Wall and moving, I think this can be pretty cheap. And if this allows you to rotate closer to the enemy team and take this full fight face to face, then this is really good, I would say. Just make sure that all the abilities are as cheap as possible. Usually the really cheap ones are shields and any sort of more movement speed boost. Let's put it this way. Yeah, if there's one. Okay, now, well, map control. Map control is the second important thing I want to talk about, because as when you play Brawl, you don't have good map control in a way. What I mean by that is you don't have capability to contest the angles. You don't have capability to kind of just move from one space to another real quick, like you can do with a dive, or like with the poke. We can control a lot of the space because we have a lot of long range capabilities. With this composition, you have to fight face to face. That's why it's really important that you're dealing with important positions first. I kind of call it push threatening angles of enemy team first. Yeah, let's maybe write it down in here, actually. Enemy team. Yeah, is an addition. Yeah, of enemy team. And then we need enough defensive sustain, like we said, to be able to do that. That's why characters with high sustain are highly beneficial when we're doing all of that. If we're looking at the characters like Thing, Emma Frost, again, talking about the Invis Woman as well, this is also a pretty good character to just have that sustain. I did see that a lot of the pro teams been using Adam too, but just because he has the capability to Raz, yeah, this is pretty great. Any of the ultimates like that, where you have that sustainability, it makes it easy for you to control the map, yeah, control the point too. Okay, let me see if there's anything else what I missed, but I think I mentioned pretty much everything about the rotations and resources. Yeah, do you guys have any questions about all of this in here so far? Or obviously we'll cover examples of everything later. I will show you the pro play after, but yeah, any questions? Everything makes sense, I assume. Okay. Then the last slide about the series is gonna be this. Well, it's not really the last, but yeah, last before we watch the pro play and watch the team compositions exactly, applying all this stuff. It's gonna be this. This is what I usually use just to give it easy explanation of how each composition operates. If we have Brawl, it's usually gonna be this graph over here. We have really high value right at the start. Why? Because we have a lot of defensive resources, but the longer the fight is gonna be, the more resources we're gonna lose. Our power level will go down. That's why we need to try to force the early fights as much as possible. Yeah, I think I do mention it somewhere here. Yeah, rotate to enemy, first early fight, so you're able to go at the short range, exactly. Where, for example, with something like spam, you have, or like poke, yeah, let's just call it this way for now, we have this consistent value. Usually with the dive, it's more spiky value. We go in, we use our mobility, we use a lot of our burst, and then after that we have to get out and our value drops, and then after that hopefully we have another spike. So yeah, with the Brawl composition, really reliant on taking those early fights. Anyway, let's use some of the examples. Yeah, let's just talk about those for now, and should be good. Kind of our TLDR based on all of this series. If we're trying to fight with the Brawl composition, is going to be pretty much, let's try to force early fights. We're using enclosed space, and we're forcing an enemy to come to us or rotate to them. We're playing around the positions where we cannot get surrounded, and using abilities to reduce incoming damage when rotating towards the enemy. This is how we would keep it simple for now. Yeah, I'm just gonna, let me just find you the videos I wanted to show you guys. Just give me a few seconds. So I'll get all those ready. There are a couple, actually more than a couple, around 5 now. Yeah, so I'm pretty much gonna use the previous videos I showed in the map guides. I think there's been pretty good example what the Brawl composition does, and then there are also gonna be some new ones too. Okay, yeah, I think we're good to start with this one. Yeah, but before we start, is everything clear? Or maybe something does not make sense? I can elaborate on something. You guys want to? Okay, probably make everything make sense for now. Right, clear to me. Perfect. So let's just talk about this example here. I did mention, again, I reviewed this game in the map guides, but I still think this is a good example of what the role composition does. Like we mentioned, we are trying to follow this idea using enclosed spaces a lot, forcing the enemy to come to us or rotating to them. So what this team does in here, we see that, oh, sorry, this is the wrong one. Yeah, we see that the red team will actually try to use the TP strat right now because they have more brawl capabilities. There are some characters with the sustain, well, which provides sustain. It can be Loki, even though he's pretty long range oriented. Cloak and Dagger provides some sustain too. And obviously, both Doctor Strange and Groot are pretty brawl-ish. You have big shield of the Doctor Strange. This defensive can allow your team to stay alive a little bit longer. Well, and the Groot is all about the walls, splitting the enemy, and maybe just making it easy for us to get rid of the angles. Like we said, we don't want to deal with too many angles, so we can try to just remove the angles because we play the Groot wall. And Emma, well, just really oppressive the short range too. Well, we see the exact TP. By the way, those guys, they, I think, will try to flip the map, and they're exactly using those enclosed spaces. Unfortunately, they made a few mistakes, though. This is common. It's just when they are in this space, they have to choose what to fight. And this is what I said before. This composition is really resource-based. That's why if you notice that you're taking too long fight and you're not moving towards the enemy or not forcing a fight, yeah, because here, well, if we're not on the point, we're not forcing the fight, right? Or and at the same time, well, we're not moving towards any target. Might be difficult. So you can notice that some of our Doctor Strange shield been used. We used our lamp. So here, if this team will remain in here for too long, they might die eventually. So that's what happens to this team. But this is a pretty good example of how you can start. Yeah, how you can start moving in by using the enclosed space. Now, let me just show you another one. It's pretty much the same one. A real quick example was the TP, how the team just rotated, goes in, moves closer, and using the enclosed space too. Yeah, we see kind of similar, well, almost similar team composition, but we have Adam, also provides great sustainability. By the way, whenever you're trying to form Brawl composition, do not just look at which characters are short range oriented, yeah, which characters are just gonna be fighting face to face. No, you can really think about the characters, some core characters which are really brawling face to face, like maybe it's Groot, maybe it's gonna be Doctor Strange, maybe Bucky in a way to, yeah, we can fight more of a mid-range to short-range sidelines, and then try to pick the characters which are complementing the Brawl characters. Usually any characters with high sustainability. That's why we see that Invis Woman can be played quite a lot. In my opinion, you have the great ultimate to just sustain your team. You have a big healing output with all the with just general healing, and Cloak and Dagger as well. With all the shields, yeah, when we saw this floating shield or the bubble, it can provide a lot of the healing when we stacked up together a little bit more. And the Atom is just great with the rest. In my opinion, Soulbound as well. This can also provide more sustain too. That's why you see that played. But yeah, we see that this team actually, they're making a move. Let's just watch it again, what they did. They're doing some of the scouting too, making sure they're not making the move too early. Yeah, they're spending some time and figuring out when to hit the enemy, and then they start the pressure. They go in, try to fight. Both teams trying to use some of their sustain tools right now, but because we with this fight really early, now there's might be a high chance that we might win this. Honestly, the enemy team also are running more of a Brawl composition, but all of this now comes down to who is better at resources, who is using more of the resources. Let's put it this way, if we are able to force something big without cheaper resources, then our Brawl team will win. And yeah, breaking all this down, I think the most important is always going to be how we use our hook in this case, how we use our wall, so we can be exactly getting a lot of value. For example, if we hooked in somebody, then there's a lot of sustain the enemy team has to throw in. Like, it might be the Loki Lamp, it can be, I don't know, just the Groot going in, the Emma Frost going in, trying to help with their defensive abilities too, stuff like that. So we see that kind of both teams here, they're trying to play pretty much in enclosed spaces or force point. Yeah, forcing point can be the move too. The blue team actually trying to force the point right now, and Yeah, it just depends on who is better. Right now, it seems that the blue team done better job with all the cooldowns management, and they farmed the ultimate faster. Like they're bulky, farmed the ultimate pretty quick. So at this point, they're able to get more value. Yeah, both Brawl teams been playing at this current moment. So, all right. Yeah. Do you guys have any questions about those two examples, or yeah, is everything clear enough? If everything's clear, then we can keep watching the other examples. Okay, I prepared some. It's been from the grand finals. I think it's gonna be stage day 2. Yeah, day 2. This is gonna be interesting as well. A pretty good team I like as well. A lot of the players in here, by the way, I know. Actually, for the both teams, they've been playing on Overwatch, like Naga, Trust Me, Crook, and also there's entire Overwatch lobby. Really, those really, all of those players really good, and you see that Virtus Pro currently, they will try to force out the point. They will try to force the enemy to make a move. The Navi here, they have this another, well, it's not Brawl composition anymore. It's more of a, it's sort of hybrid Brawl and Poke right now. So they cannot take the fights face to face right away, because if they do, then they will lose this poke value. Like we said, that let's just go back to this presentation. If you have some poke in your composition, for example, we have Magneto, yeah, we have, I don't know, it's just something what can always get the fight with this cheap damage, the poke damage. Yeah, this is a consistent line like this, and if you're able to take the longer fights, then we're usually gonna win. And there's just a couple mistakes this, in my opinion, the Virtus Pro did, but yeah, anyway, they try to force the point and see what the Groot is trying to do as well. They not only trying to provide the sustainability with the wall, but it's also more about just maybe a lot of times removing the extra angle we have to deal with, because the point can be quite open to a lot of the attacks. Yeah, we said that it's really bad if he gets surrounded as a Brawl. So I think we have to use the enclosed spaces in a way like use this one here, and also try to use the space under the point. Now that's what the Virtus Pro will try to do. Let's see if they succeed with that. But yeah, in my opinion, there've been couple mistakes they did. We'll talk about those later. Anyway, we see that they're trying to just play the point, play really stacked up together. Bucky, and on their team, though, they might take more softer angles, I think. Try to look for the hook, make sure that there's no defensive ability in the way of their hook. That's what they're trying to do. And the enemy team started to move to point. The point unlocks. Now both teams are fighting versus each other. And the Red team knows, though, that the longer the fight is, the more beneficial for them it is going to be, in my opinion. It's just really trying to establish a little bit more of a angle control, trying to force out more sustain, especially the Groot walls. This is pretty big. So they are not committing right away. Yeah, they're trying to place some of their tanks like Mag, the Emma, to contest the point, but the rest of their backline playing really, really slow. Sparker, meanwhile, trying to search for the hook opportunities too. This is also pretty important right now. Yeah, both teams are now face to face. But the important thing for me, for Virtus.pro here, even though they win the long-term game, I think it's just this first fight. What they could be doing better if we go back is trying to not force the fight on the point too early, because the thing is, the point only is going to be unlocking in some time. Yeah, there's still some time you can be spending to just make sure that you preserve enough resources for the actual fight. So in my opinion, it can be even okay play to just try to rotate to the enemy. Like I said, forcing fights, early fights, not only by forcing points, but just moving closer to the enemy. Maybe even not necessarily going here, but controlling the high ground first, moving in, and then after that moving back to point. But honestly, it's just my opinion. Yeah, maybe they had different plan. It was based on something else. Yeah, maybe there was certain play they wanted to try to do, which I think is completely fine. Yeah, maybe looking for the good picks from the Sparker with the hooks. Yeah, maybe there's something else like, I don't know, even the Groot wall, which can get them a lot of value. But yeah, I think it's just because they started in here a little bit early. The Red team, they had slightly more chances to force out more of the defensive resources, which you will actually see in the long term. Once they will play this fight, the defensive resources might get forced out. But yeah, anyway, and just keep watching. Yeah. So we see that the Brawl team, unfortunately, the Sparker is not able to get a lot of the hooks done. But yeah, they're trying to play their best, and eventually you see them when they losing their resources, they're starting to stabilize. Yeah, it's so important that we not just moving kind of not always move in towards the enemy, kind of do not full rush in, but go from corner to corner just in case. If you have less defensive capabilities, you have less sustain, a lot of the times it can be okay call to just try to stabilize, try to just go back and this is what they try to do. They try to exactly move back a little bit, and here in the enclosed space in the room, unfortunately, it doesn't work, and Fincy gets hooked in. Unfortunately, it's really really good for the Rat team now. So this is the part of the reason why it's gonna be a little bit tough for the Virtus Pro. Anyway, Sparker gets a pick though. Let's see. I think eventually it still will not go in their favor too much. Yeah, a lot of the stuff's going on. We'll not talk about the ultimates here, but yeah, Druidro gets a pick, but then a Rat team eventually they will be able to resustain if I'm not mistaken. Let me see. Yeah, they will make it work. So because the fight's been so long, they've been able to force out so many defensive resources. Yeah, that's been working out for them quite okay. Yeah. Anyway, after that though, the Virtus Pro been able to retake the space, yeah, even though they lost this first fight, and you see that they remain the same composition. Now we have ultimates like Groot. We also have the Atom. A lot of the good opportunities for us to just go in and maybe try to raz a lot of the guys too. I think this is great. And yeah, we see that the Rat team is starting the controlling the high ground the right away. But the Virtus Pro, they have to do two things. It's like we said, either try to rotate to the enemy or try to force the point. And with Brawl team, this is always the challenge. If you're trying to rotate towards the enemy like this way, like we talked about at the start, which could be possible, yeah, because I think they have time to rotate if the point is going to be unlocked in a few seconds only. But right now, when each second counts, yeah, each percentage counts, I think it's so good that we try to rotate on the point right away, force early fight, especially if we have a lot of them. A lot of AoE resources, like for example the Groot. Yeah, maybe we can try to force the enemy to drop on the point, try to use the Groot ultimate there, try to get great value. Obviously, trying to also play around the enemy ultimates here, like Doctor Strange, can be pretty oppressive too. Yeah, and the blue team is trying to do exactly that. Yeah, forcing the point right now. Well, I think this will turn out okay for them in the long term. Yeah, the Red team actually moved away. They moved away their Groot, and this is really good play. I think because with the Shark, yeah, with the Jeff, you have some more mobility compared to the Groot, and like we said, the Bro team really likes to play stacked in. And if we isolate somebody, this might get not there might be not as much value for them. This will be difficult to support each other, move as a unit. Yeah, and they might be just more open to multiple angles to get surrounded in a way. Yeah, this is the weaknesses of the Brawl all the time. If you get surrounded, that's gonna be pretty tough. Okay, anyway, we'll see that both teams trying to actively fight on the point. I will not comment too much on the ability usage, but yeah, most of the time I think this is so good if we have some of the our Winter Soldier, like it doesn't matter on which team, if it gets a lot of value, the hooks just misplace. We try to misplace somebody, we can force out so many resources, in my opinion. Yeah, or like get a pick, which is even better. So yeah, just a lot of it comes down to that, I think, too. Anyway, the blue team now, the Virtus Pro, they're able to get a lot of value out of this fight, able to sustain too. Now we see there's a lot of sustainability. We kind of skip this fight in here. Yeah, I think they using their ultimate, and then after that there's gonna be the Cyper with the ultimate to sustain on the point too. Yeah, there's just gonna be a lot a lot of the sustain currently for them, which is just pretty decent. Like I said, if you know that if you know you have the characters which are able to resustain the fight for you, I think that's always good to have, and just use it at the right moment when you're low on the resources. Whenever we lose a lot of defensive, this can be great. Right. We are, yeah, we keep on fighting on the point, and a pretty long fight, to be honest. But yeah, at the end of the day, I think the Virtus Pro will capture the point, and it'll be interesting to see what they will do after. And to be honest, they will not just hold the point right away. We said that it's good to try to force the enemy on the point, but it's also good to try to force early fights somewhere else. As long as you take the early fight and it's going to be in more enclosed space, you'll move towards the enemy. This can be pretty good. And this is what the Virtus Pro will try to do. I think they will try to move towards the enemy spawn and take early fight there. You really don't have to stack on a point. Just make sure it's not even about using this high gun here, because I think if they start here right now, the Rat team will have slight more advantage because of more poke provided by them. So Virtus Pro will try to take the early fight, and they will try to exactly move in towards the enemy here. We gonna hold the choke somewhere. It's gonna be this choke over here. Maybe we can get early picks with our Winter Soldier hooks. Also, hopefully, our walls can provide sustainability, can maybe remove some of the scary angles from the enemy team too, and split anybody who walks in our space too. So this is what they're trying to do, constantly fight for the space. Yeah, there's a lot of happening right now. But then afterwards, they actually decide to move to point. Yeah, they're not taking the fight here. Why? Because the big thing is always make sure that you plan around something bigger. Yeah, it's not only, I'd say, it matters what space you're fighting for, but ultimates matter so much more. It matters even more. And in their case, they have Emma, which is coming up. They also might have Invis too. And those ultimates, they're gonna play around more. Ultimate always matters more compared to the position. Ideally, want to have both. If they would have an ultimate and they have a good position right on the choke there as well, I think it's possible for them to take the early fight. But now, yeah, they understand they have to play slow, but meanwhile, try to use the enclosed space. And here too, if possible. Yeah, use corners. This is really important. Notice how everybody on the blue team, and just honestly, even on Navi, it doesn't matter what composition you play. It's so important that you use the corners to not get abilities forced too early. But especially with the Brawl, it's so crucial. If your defensive are forced because of your not good positioning, if you're trying to compensate with your cooldowns for that, then this is not a deal, really. So you see how Sparker is so good at using the corner, and you see that little dodge too. Yeah, the Bucky here on the red team, they're looking for the hook. They know that this angle is more likely to pick, but this here, Spark anticipates that. Yeah, they try to use the corner to their advantage, and we're not even using the defensive. We don't have the shield of our invisible woman. Even there's no shield or like a Groot wall or anything to cover for our mistake. It is always ideal. Just making sure that we play in the cover first. Yeah, anyway, taking this face-to-face fights, and the blue team sustained right at the time. Notice the HP starts to be dropping. It's usually we're losing our defensive stuff too. Gonna be some of our shields right there. The ammo used the shield. I think the ammo, if I'm not mistaken, they also use their mode, the crystal mode. And then if we do so, after that, this is a great time for you to sustain. Yeah, as support, you always have to track that too. If my team is low on sustain resources, this is the best time for me to use the ultimate. It's not just try to initiate, but kind of let them to take a little bit of damage. If you know that the fight is gonna take place in the point, well, great time for you to use the ultimate once the defensive resources are being used. Yeah, maybe some of the escape resources being used too. You see how the Rat team is cutting now, right? Why? Because they cannot take face-to-face fights as comfortably. Obviously, they have Groot now too, I think, so this kind of adds a little bit more Brawl value too, in my opinion, compared to the Doctor Strange, for example. But yeah, still. Yeah, both teams are trying to. Yeah, we see there's a lot of that going on now. There's also Fancy. They're gonna be using their Amma Ultimate to punish all that setup from the Red team. So yeah, this is so important for the Red team to kite. All right, let's stop here. And yeah, do you guys have any questions, or is everything clear? You can take a pause, breathe for a second. You guys can also unmute, by the way. You want to ask about anything? About any?
I actually do have a question, and that may not really like attend to like the I don't know the clips you showed me, but more like the compositions like as a whole. And basically, the meat of the question is, well, Iron Fist,
Oh yeah.
because I've been told that like Iron Fist is basically like the antithesis of like a Brawl character, but I've also heard like many other things of he's flexible. He can also dive, but also like all sorts of other things. It's confusing, but like, where would Iron Fist like fit into all this, especially with like all the nerfs and buffs and changes?
Yeah, yeah. In my opinion, if he applied the same triangle, I think because of just how a lot of the mobility he still has, he's leaning more towards the dive category. Yeah, so like this is the part of it. Let's say, I'm thinking how to phrase it. Yeah, let's say the dive. Let's imagine this sort of scale. Yeah, each category has the scale 1 to 5. There's 1 to 5. There's 1 to 5 too. There's no poke capabilities on the Iron Fist, 0 pretty much. So we can
Of
not put him
course.
in here. And for the dive, I think this is kind of like 3 or 4. And for the brawl, it's gonna be I think 2 or 3. Let's say it this way, maybe even 2. Again, the number is not the most accurate, but so you know, the main direction is gonna be dive because all of his mobility tools, but the brawl is mostly just his sustainability. Yeah, when we use the right click, yeah, we can try to potentially even try to make sure that we sustain with that a little bit. Yeah, there also sustainability with the shields in a way. Yeah, so he can brawl, but he
Oh,
does not have as much sustain as any other tank, for example. This is what it means. The brawl is mostly about sustainability at the same time while fighting face to face. That's why some people will tell you, well, this guy's good at brawling, but he can also dive. But you just gotta know that each character, especially in this game, it can be pretty versatile. Just understand the main direction of the character and understand the when you can do each thing. So most of the time you're trying to dive. What it means, you can try to set up, you can try to go deep in the backline, abuse your mobility this way, and if something goes wrong, you can always get out on the off angle. Well, even deep flank too, honestly, and you can just resustain by yourself. Take the HP pack. There's a meditation too. Yeah, you can resustain your HP, and after that you get in again, and then you get out. Yeah, that's why it's mostly about the dive. Yeah, always using our mobility to pressure, and also setup. And brawl, yeah, it's mostly we using the pressure, some of the sustain too. Honestly, maybe it's not even 3, just 2. I don't think it's too strong. Yeah, if we compare the characters, maybe if we do a tier list of the characters, who can brawl more, who can die more, I could do that maybe, but yeah, we can just kind of divide everything in the numbers too. We gotta be more specific. Yeah, just what each character does, how much shields we get, how much, I don't know, sustain we have. But yeah, this is my opinion on the character. It makes sense.
oh, all right.
Yeah,
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 that makes sense.
yeah. Okay, yeah. Hope it's clear enough. Yeah. So yeah. By the way, we any of the characters we talked about in the slides, all of those pretty much can fit in a brawl category or just brawl characters by nature. For example, the Thing, Emma, both brawlers. This is more of a brawl and dive. This here is brawl. This is brawl and poke at the same time, but mostly brawl. Mr. Fantastic, brawl 100%, and this can fit in the brawl and poke as well because sustainability. There's a lot of sustainability. I think the brawl can be pretty good with Invisible Woman. Um, stuff like that. Even Loki can still be sometimes okay in a brawl, and we saw that. We talked about some of those clips we watched, how teams been using the Loki, but I think most of his damage comes from the read far, so you gotta be careful what space you're fighting for. And that's what I think as well. With the Virtus Pro, it might be maybe one of the reasons why they went on the point, because they have the Atom and it has some longer range capabilities, but I'm not sure. I don't think it's still the best play by them to instantly force the point, rather let the point unlock and either play in close space, which is really close to point, and contest it right at this once the point will unlock, or just keep moving towards the enemy. But yeah, it's really, we cannot judge because we don't know the exact plan, and the plan, a lot of it depends on some of the specific details. Yeah, the specific, it's maybe the certain ability they trying to play around. Yeah, they maybe trying to play around certain. It's usually going to be some sort of carry they might have who's really good. For example, Sparker is really good APS. Yeah, I think there's a big chance they also play around him. Yeah, and we don't exactly know, obviously, unless we interview the coaches. But they cannot leak all the strategies too. But this is my experience too with the teams. Yeah, we cannot exactly say you just play. You need to play this way. Yeah, there's a lot of the why they're doing this, and it's a lot done behind the scenes. The planning we cannot all know about this, but anyway, we can still see the general directions though of the compositions. Are those are being applied? Yeah, and then talk about the nuances as well. Yeah, yeah, so we talked a lot about the Brawl. I think there's some good stuff to add as well about it since we watched a lot of those clips. I also have some more for you, just in case. Yeah, I think we have at least two. Yeah, so we talked about them holding a choke. Let me see. There's gonna be, yeah, there's gonna be one more game just in case if we're not gonna have enough time. It's gonna be from day 3. By the way, guys, if you really want to watch those games by yourself, really good games. I think especially Virtus Pro, really, and yeah, they're honestly all the teams are good. Most of them Axel Watch players too. Obviously, they're really good with fundamentals. But anyway, let's go back to the presentation. Okay, we are gonna be in here. Yeah, so we talked about the win condition at last, and I just wanted to add the communication specifics. Yeah, and this is what can change your planning. Again, I'm covering the most important stuff. Yeah, let's maybe actually mark this. Oh, actually, never mind. Let's just remain it this way. Communication specifics. And just in case, if I want to go more in depth in the communication, we can do another masterclass. Or I actually did the communication before. It's been something like fundamentals, yeah, communication fundamentals. I talked a lot about who should be calling what, about the target callers, about the exactly who should be calling the push, who should be calling to sustain the fight, stuff like that. But yeah, the most important communication for us in the Brawl, it should be especially about the movement communication, because we don't have as many. Just how do we take space, how do we move in or move out, it should be called. It's usually called by the tank. Now let's maybe put it as note. Tank usually calls that out. A lot of the times that could be main support. Yeah, main support, it's just anybody who, because they have good overview of the fight, they might be playing behind, they have this a lot of the capabilities to just see what's going on. I think this is great. Yeah, this is great for them too. Or main support. And usually calling out, are we going in? Are we going out? Sometimes too. With out, I will elaborate on that later. It's going to be a mostly stabilized call. But yeah, in or turn. Turn, this is pretty specific, but still interesting. Whenever you play against the dive, especially, because you want to play as a unit. If we make the turn call, that means we're trying to peel for the backline and try to destroy the diver, yeah? Or we really strong at fighting face to face. So if there's anybody who is just being by themselves, even though there's just one diver, if you're trying to fight with them, and if you're doing it in the right space, if we're cutting towards the enclosed space too, like we saw with those clips in here, something goes wrong. Yeah, let's go back in here. Yeah, something goes wrong. Teams can use enclosed spaces. Oh, actually, let me just use the different one. Yeah, so we watched, yeah, I think this is even better, yeah? When we watch the teams play inside this room, yeah, cutting towards this space if something goes wrong. And same goes about the divers. If they are going on you, you can always cut there, punish them, and make the turn call. A second type of communication a lot of the times can be about sustain, increasing your sustain. And the most important, really, and this is what I see people usually been making most mistakes with, when I've been coaching contenders in Overwatch, or when I've been coaching collegiate teams in Overwatch. It doesn't matter, pro teams, just no, well, even casual teams. They usually not making the stabilized call. They kind of all over the place, and that's why some of their groups, even though we're calling out stabilize, some of their groups take a lot of the damage. They're not playing the corners. So the second group have to compensate for that. Or like even the character by their nature, yeah, it doesn't matter. Like let's say I play, let me just go back, yeah. Let's say we play Vidi and Dropon as the Groot. Then we might be forced to use our walls early, or we play it on the open as Amma. We might be forced to use our crystal mode early. This is not ideal. We have to be really mindful about the space we play in and use corners as your first shield, 100%. Make sure that you're able to stabilize this way, and when we calling out that stabilize, that exactly means play near cover, go towards the corners, and recharge cooldowns. So get your abilities back, the defensive cooldowns back. If you want to practice, I don't know if anyone will be watching this or already watching, if you guys scrimming as a team, try to figure out what are the biggest abilities you play around, the sustainability tools you play around, and make sure that you calling out when those are gone. When you have those, for example, I'm using my crystal mode as Emma. We're using Groot wall. Okay, we don't have this. Let's stabilize. No crystal, no wall, stabilize. Yeah, call this out. Yeah, try to base your stabilize calls of the defensive abilities you have. Sometimes it can be offensive, but honestly, I think the sustain is the most important for any brawl composition. That's why it can be always good to start with that first. Okay. Yeah, let's see. Yeah, let's just go back to the presentation. Well, what do we have? Oh, yeah. Another call is also kind of stabilized, but it can be used in a different way too. You just stack on somebody. Whenever you know that this person, maybe they're in danger, or just in general, they have some sustainability, you know that, okay, they have this Invis-Woman ultimate. Let's stack on Invis-Woman, and you can call this out stack on X, yeah, stack on this. All of this stabilize, it can be done by anybody, honestly. But in my experience, especially as a tank player, when I was playing, if you guys don't know, I've been playing on Overwatch. It's been mainly Reinhardt, Winston, a little bit of Orisa too. But yeah, mainly Reinhardt, Winston. I've been able to reach top 10 in this game, and I've always been making the stabilize call. If I'm playing as a team, there's been goats meta back in the days too, and really reliant on just knowing when to go in, when to go out, when to stabilize, all of that stuff, and stacking on somebody who has the sustainability, who has a capability for us to make it easy to win the fight. Yeah, we have the Invis-Woman ultimate. We have to call this out. Yeah, so this can be the one. Yeah, you can group up on a lie, or you can also group up on a position. Let's say, let's group up, stack on building, stack on point, stack on somewhere. Yeah, make the call, but make sure that everybody knows what that is. So it should be pretty much universal. Okay. Oh, you also mentioned, oh, I have to go, thanks for the class. Yeah, all good, all good. Yeah, yeah. Just in case, guys, you can always watch the recordings of the class too. That's all good. Now, this is it, mostly, about the communication. There are a lot more specifics, really. But you can rewatch the previous class too, just in case. Do you guys have any questions about the communication? Or does that make sense? Is it good enough? Okay, yeah, just in case, if you guys want to unmute, don't hesitate. If not, then let's keep moving. Yeah, probably Orange he will. Yeah. Yeah, I was anticipating that. Yeah, the final slide is going to be just knowing how to play against each composition, but this can be pretty much more in-depth talk how each composition plays into each other. I know there's a lot of theory going on, and it's been the same on Overwatch, that it's sort of rock, paper, scissors in a way, like one composition counters another, but in reality it's not true. For the higher level play, it's always about knowing how one matchup plays into another. And in the case of the Brawl, like we said, yeah, I'm not sure like what was the original. I actually forgot what was that rock paper scissors, like what counters what. But anyway, I will give you the example of that. For example, a lot of the people would say, I don't know, maybe somebody will tell you poke counters Brawl, right? But poke only can counter Brawl if we play for more longer range space and the Brawl takes a lot of damage, yeah? Let's say poke plays here and Brawl plays here. Well, then our Brawl is getting countered in a way. But if Brawl will meet the poke inside this building, what happens to the poke? well, they will die instantly because we're forcing early fights. That's why do not take it as a certain composition counters certain composition. It's more about just knowing for what space we play for, play it right, and force the enemy team to play by your own rules. Abuse their weaknesses too. That's how I would put it. Anyway, I think I will make another masterclass on this too, just how each composition plays into one another. But regarding the Brawl, pretty simple one is, question. Hey, I'm curious, where does Blade sit in terms of Brawl? Good question. Well, you have poke capabilities for sure, right? But I think mostly it's really gonna be mostly the Brawl because of just how there's so much pressure at the short range should be done. But in my experience, what I see the Blade players do, they're not exactly on the too soft angle. They can go slightly deeper. Yeah, that's why there are also some dive capabilities too you have. Because it's just so good to surprise the enemy. You have a lot of the potential, like especially with the combo, when we hit the shotgun and then after that we try to follow up with the Nellies. Yeah, I think this is great. But mostly Brawl, in my opinion. It's just not sitting with your team 100%. Go on separate angle. Go on a separate angle. That's how I would say. Yeah. Regarding this though, we mentioned that the Brawl is weak to the angles. Weak to angles, we need to surround the Brawl. That's number one. That's what usually the dive does really well, and we need to force fights in the open space versus the Brawl usually. There's a lot of those potential angles. Like we said, if we are really forcing the Brawl to play over here versus to play inside the building, yeah, the Brawl more likely to be losing on that right side. And another thing is play slow fights. Is just always poke down the Brawl, make sure that you force as many resources as possible, defensive ones. It's usually going to be something like try to soft engage with the dive, and maybe you force out couple abilities, yeah, force out the sustain, and then after that you can hard dive, yeah, hard engage. But yeah, this is for the dive, and for the poke, it's mainly just do a lot of damage. Just make sure that you constantly poke before the fight, you constantly rotate and poke the enemy. Yeah, don't take face-to-face fights. If the Brawl is moving towards you, then try to surround them a little bit more, try to maybe even flip the map sometimes. Yeah, try to maybe completely rotate away from the Brawl. That's completely fine, honestly. Yeah, so just a good mix of stuff, but still Brawl as a whole. I would say mostly yes. Again, versatile character, but most of his traits are Brawl. Like if you compare, I think there was a question about Iron Fist. Iron Fist was more about the dive, and in our case, this play is gonna be more about the Brawl. There's still some dive capabilities though. With Iron Fist, there are a lot of dive capabilities though. Just look at the mobility. I know this is again kind of my more intuitive look to just give you exact numbers, like where for each percentage, yeah, for each category. I think we need to exactly look into the numbers a little bit more. But yeah, anyway, just give you a simple direction. Mostly it's Brawl, and there's also the minority of it, like 1/3 probably is gonna be only dive. Yeah, that's how I would put it. Okay, I think we almost done with everything. We talked about pretty much the most fundamentals, and we can go more in depth on the Brawl composition too. But yeah, is everything been clear for today? Do you guys have any questions? Feel free to ask those. We still have time. Huh. Is there anything else what you want to know? So no final questions. You guys sure? If yes, then we're about to end. Mm-hmm. All right, I don't see any questions. So, yeah, just in case, you can always message me later. And I think feel free to tag me in the Academy as well. And by the way, to just remind you guys, if you want coaching from me, you can always visit this last page. There's going to be my coaching link in here. This is separate from the all the links from the Academy. It's just a different page here. But yeah, feel free to take advantage of that too. And I also do coaching for teams as well. We can definitely talk about a lot of the stuff which we talked about here, but even more in depth. But yeah, I will be probably preparing more masterclasses on the team compositions, how one plays into one another. But yeah, we need to first of all finish with fundamentals of each one first. We'll see if you guys have any questions later, have any suggestions to what you want me to cover, then let me know. Just post it on the feedback channel. Oh, and by the way, I will post all those notes in here, class and drills. There's gonna be in the notes. I will tag you, and you can have the presentation, and the recording is gonna be linked to, just in case. Right, then I think that's it for today. If everything's good, yeah. Thanks for being so cool. You're a good coach, Gefest. Yeah, thank you, thank you. You guys are cool too. I appreciate you guys. If any of those tips been helpful, at least 1-2 tips you can apply in your games, it's a really big win for me, honestly. Don't try to apply everything at once. Just one step at a time, and it should be good. I like to listen to it during driving. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I like to listen to those kind of lessons too, to be honest. I know it's been, for me, it's been some Marvel Rivals, some Overwatch. Sometimes I have to listen to the podcast too, so yeah, I understand. Like podcast, yeah. Yeah, yeah. I like that too. Yeah, honestly. It's just sometimes you do the stuff around your house. Yeah, this makes sense. Right, anyway, I think I'll try to end the record.